My name is Juliet Flynn, and I'm 29 years old. By the time most people my age were debating whether to rent or keep living with roommates, I already knew exactly how far love can stretch in one direction and how brutally it can snap back when you finally say no. If you'd watched my family from the outside, you'd think I grew up in a perfectly normal Colorado suburb with perfectly normal parents and a perfectly normal older brother. You'd see birthday banners in the backyard, Christmas lights twinkling in winter, and a driveway packed full of relatives on holidays. What you wouldn't see is where I stood in all of that. My brother, Alex, is 3 years older than me, and according to my parents, he hung the moon. He was the golden boy, the future of the family, the kind of charming that could talk his way out of anything. You know the type. Easy smile, easy promises, and a way of tilting his head that made adults laugh and forgive him before he even apologized. Me? I was the responsible one, which, in my family, was just code for the one we lean on, the one we take for granted, the one who doesn't need anything. The difference between us was obvious even when we were kids. For Alex's 8th birthday, our backyard turned into a mini amusement park. There was a bounce house, a face painter, balloons tied to every chair, and a barbecue spread that could have fed half the neighborhood. I still remember the giant banner, "Happy birthday, Alex," like he was some kind of celebrity coming home from a world tour. When I turned 8, we had cake at the kitchen table. A small chocolate cake Mom baked from a boxed mix, 3 family members, and a pizza from Tony's down the street. "Sorry we couldn't do anything big this year," Mom said, brushing flour off her hands. "You know how tight things are. Besides, you're my practical girl. You don't need all that fuss, right?" I smiled and nodded, because that's what practical girls do. Don't get me wrong, I loved that chocolate cake. I loved Tony's pizza. But when you grow up watching your brother get a 3-ring circus while you get leftover streamers and a lecture about maturity, you notice. Christmas was worse. Alex would sit in the middle of a glittering pile of gifts, tearing into a brand new Xbox or a mountain bike with all the bells and whistles, while I unwrapped useful presents. New school supplies, jeans from Target, maybe a secondhand copy of a book if I was lucky. When I once dared to ask why Alex got the fun stuff, Mom gave me that look, the one that made me feel like I'd just kicked a puppy. "Juliet, you're more mature than Alex," she said. "You understand that we can't spoil everyone." But somehow, that lesson never applied to him. The real fracture came when it was time for college. Alex had already done the big college dream, University of Southern California, full ride, courtesy of my parents. Tuition, room, board, spending money, even his fraternity dues. They called it investing in his future. By the time it was my turn, we were having a very different conversation. I had worked hard in high school, AP classes, perfect attendance, and a part-time job at Barnes & Noble where I learned more about people than any textbook ever taught me. I got accepted to Colorado State University and planned to commute from home to save on dorm costs. I assumed, naively, that my parents would help the way they had with Alex. I was wrong. "If you're staying here, you'll need to contribute," Mom said, like we were talking about splitting a restaurant bill. She didn't even look up from the stack of mail she was sorting. "Contribute?" I repeated. "Rent and utilities," she replied. "Alex earned his full ride from us because he deserved it. You need to learn independence, Juliet. You'll understand one day." Independence, that word tasted like rust. Contribute turned into $500 a month plus groceries. Not a suggestion, a rule. I was 18, juggling a full course load and working at the bookstore for $8.50 an hour, shelving hardcovers, and smiling at customers who complained about the price of paperbacks. Every month, I handed over that $500 like a tenant, not a daughter. Meanwhile, Alex was calling from California to complain that his dining hall food wasn't organic enough, and my parents would mail him care packages stuffed with his favorite snacks and a $100 gift card to Whole Foods. I know, because one day the receipt slipped out of the box and landed on the counter. "I gave it to your brother because he needs it," Mom said when she saw where I was looking. "You're doing just fine." "You're doing just fine." That was another favorite line of hers. It sounded like a compliment, but it was a sentence. It meant, "We don't have to worry about you. And because we don't worry about you, we won't show up for you either." I told myself it would all be worth it once I graduated and built a life of my own. After college, I moved out as fast as I could. I found a cramped studio apartment in Denver, started my career as a software developer, and dove headfirst into the grind. Long hours, takeout dinners, the glow of a screen my only company most nights. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. My paycheck, my rent, my name on the lease. Alex, meanwhile, drifted home with a communications degree and no plan. He spent months playing video games and brainstorming business ideas that never made it past the group chat stage. My parents called him between opportunities. When he finally landed a job at a marketing firm, they treated it like he'd solved world hunger. There was a celebration dinner at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, steaks sizzling on hot plates, desserts with sparklers, champagne toasts. When I got promoted to senior developer after 2 years of grinding, they took me to Applebee's. "You must be so proud of Alex," Mom said that night, smiling at the way he scrolled through his phone even at the table. He really found his passion. I stared at the condensation sliding down my water glass and wondered what it would feel like to be the person they built the world around. Then Alex met Brianna. Brianna was pretty and sweet and had mastered the art of needing to be rescued. She drifted from job to job, retail here, receptionist there, and quit whenever things got hard. Budgeting was, in her words, too stressful. My parents adored her. When Alex and Brianna got engaged, my parents swooped in like event planners on a reality show. They paid for everything: the venue, the flowers, the dress, the open bar. I brought my boyfriend, Trevor, to the wedding. We'd been dating for 2 years. He held my hand under the table when speeches got awkward and told me in a low voice that my family didn't know how lucky they were. Mom introduced him to people as Juliet's friend. The word boyfriend never crossed her lips. After the wedding, my parents helped Alex and Brianna buy a house. Not a loan, a gift. They called it an investment in the family's future, as if they were buying a rental property and not just giving their golden child a free start in life. "Maybe someday we can do something similar for you," Dad said, clapping me on the shoulder like he was offering me a promotion. "But you're doing great on your own. You don't need our help." I smiled tightly and changed the subject like I always did. Then the grandkids started arriving. First Aiden, then Harper, then baby Chloe. Overnight, my parents transformed into the world's most devoted grandparents. Their house filled with toys, tiny shoes lined up by the door, framed handprint paintings on the walls. They set up college funds for each of the kids. They offered to babysit at the drop of a hat. Family vacations to Disney World weren't hypothetical. They were penciled into calendars. At family gatherings, I'd watch them swarm around Alex's children like they were tiny suns pulling everyone into orbit. They were adorable, no doubt. But it was hard not to notice how I faded into the background, the extra adult you put at the kids' table when there's no room left. I started skipping events. At first, it was just a work deadline here, a headache there. Then it became a habit. It was easier to be alone than to sit in a living room full of people and feel invisible. That's when the idea started to form. I'd been saving for years, living below my means, quietly stashing away every extra dollar. One night, sitting in my tiny Denver studio with my laptop balanced on my knees, I opened a real estate site. Just to look, just to imagine. A thought whispered in the back of my mind. What if I had something that was truly mine? Not shared, not borrowed, not held over my head like a favor I'd never finish repaying. A house. My house. Not an investment in the family's future, an investment in my own. I didn't tell my parents, not because it was a secret, but because I already knew what would happen if I did. They'd find a way to turn my dream into one more extension of Alex's life. They'd start suggesting more bedrooms for the kids, ask why I needed so much space when it's just you, insist I buy near Alex's neighborhood so they could pop over with the grandkids. I wanted one thing in my life that they couldn't redesign in his image. So I looked in silence. I thought I was being careful. I thought I'd finally found a part of my life they couldn't reach. I should have known better. The news got out the way it always does, through the one person at work who treats gossip like a competitive sport. My coworker, Linda, heard me mention house hunting near the break room once. By yoga class that evening, she'd already told someone else. That someone else turned out to be Brianna's sister. By the next day, my private dream had traveled through the family grapevine faster than flu season. The call came on a Thursday evening. I was at my desk, reviewing code, the blue light of my monitor washing the room in a tired glow. My phone lit up with Mom. I hesitated before answering. "Hi, Mom." Her voice came through the line, bright and sugary, the way it always did when she wanted something. "Juliet, why didn't you tell us you're looking for a house?" My fingers froze over the keyboard. The cursor blinked on the screen. Somewhere deep in my chest, something cold uncoiled. I knew, with the kind of certainty that makes your stomach drop, that whatever came next was not going to be about me finally having a home. It was going to be about them, and about my brother, again. House, I echoed, playing dumb, even though my heart was already pounding. Yes, Mom said, drawing the word out like we were sharing a fun secret. Linda told someone in her yoga class that you're house hunting. Isn't that wonderful? Of course she did. I could have denied it. I could have said I was just browsing. But I was tired and knee-deep in a bug that wouldn't fix itself, and I didn't have the energy to dance around the truth. I've been looking, I said. Nothing serious yet. Well, Mom continued, her voice turning brisk and purposeful, your father and I have been talking, and we have some wonderful ideas for you. Wonderful ideas. My stomach tightened. You're going to need something with at least 5 bedrooms, she said. You know, for when the kids visit, and it would be perfect if you found something near Alex and Brianna's neighborhood. I swiveled slowly in my chair, staring at the wall of my apartment like it might offer subtitles in case I'd misheard. 5 bedrooms, I repeated. Of course, Mom said, as if it were obvious. A room for you, one for Aiden, one for Harper, one for Chloe, and maybe a guest room, and a proper office space. Alex really needs a quiet place to work when they're over. There it was. My house, I said carefully, isn't going to be an extension of Alex's. She laughed like I'd made a joke. Oh, Juliet, don't be so dramatic. This is your chance to really help the family. There was that word again. Help. It sounded less like an opportunity and more like a sentence. I'm not looking for a place for Alex's family to visit, I said, rubbing my temples. I'm looking for a place for me to live. A beat of silence. Don't be silly, Mom said. Family is what matters most. You'll want space for everyone. No, I thought. For once, I really wouldn't. After we hung up, I sat in the dark, my office monitor casting a pale rectangle of light on my hands. On the screen, lines of code waited patiently for my attention. Instead, I stared at my reflection in the black glass of the window. I'd gone into house hunting thinking I was making a practical, adult decision. But of course, nothing I did was ever just mine. In my parents' minds, my life was a resource to be allocated, and now they'd found a new use for it. The next morning, the links started arriving. My phone chimed during stand-up, again at lunch, again while I was trying to focus on a tricky deployment. Mom, look at this one house. 6 bedrooms, huge yard. The kids would love this. Brianna, this kitchen is perfect for family dinners. And the basement could be Alex's office. Mom, this neighborhood is only 8 minutes from Alex and Bree's place. Imagine holidays. Every listing was the same. Giant, expensive houses with sprawling backyards, and more bedrooms than I could fill in a lifetime. Every description they sent me had nothing to do with what I wanted. It was always about the kids, family gatherings, Alex's office. I muted the group chat. I kept looking on my own. Weeks passed in a haze of work and real estate tabs. I saw places that were too dark, too noisy, too sterile, too far. Condos that felt like upgraded hotel rooms. Townhouses pressed so tightly together I could hear someone sneezing through the walls. And then I found it. The photos didn't look like much at first. Slightly crooked angles, bad lighting. But something about the listing made me click anyway. 2-bedroom Craftsman, Lakewood, original hardwood floors, wraparound porch, small yard, east-facing kitchen. I drove out there on a Saturday morning. The sky was that soft, washed-out blue you only get after a night of rain. When I pulled up, I just sat there in my car for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, staring. The house wasn't big. It didn't scream for attention. The paint on the porch railing was a little chipped. There was a narrow path leading to the front steps with a few stubborn weeds pushing through the cracks. But it felt possible. Inside, the floors creaked in the right way. The living room had a small, built-in reading nook beneath a window with a worn cushion that begged to be replaced and sunlight pooling on the floorboards. The kitchen was cozy, not huge, but when I stood at the sink, I could imagine morning light spilling over coffee mugs and the sound of rain against the windows. The second bedroom was just big enough to be an office or a guest room, not a dormitory for my brother's children. I walked through slowly, fingertips grazing walls and door frames, trying not to let my heart sprint too far ahead of reality. But it did anyway. I could make a life here, I whispered, and for once the image that came to mind didn't include my parents, my brother, or anyone else. Just me. Maybe Trevor sometimes, curled up on the couch beside me. My real estate agent glanced over. What was that? Nothing, I said, but my voice shook. Let's talk numbers. When my offer was accepted, I sat alone at my kitchen table in the studio apartment I'd outgrown and cried. Just a little. The quiet, trembling kind of crying you don't even feel until you taste salt. Not because I was sad, because for the first time in my life, I had something big and important and real, and my parents were not involved. I went through closing like a woman moving underwater, present, focused, but not fully believing any of it was happening until I walked out with the keys, cold metal in my palm, my name on the deed. The first time I stepped into that house with the keys in my own hand, it felt different. No agent, no checklists, no clipboard. Just me and hollow rooms full of echoing air and promise. I stood in the center of the living room and turned in a slow circle. I pictured a bookshelf against that wall, a couch under that window, a lamp in the corner where the light dipped. I pictured myself sitting in that reading nook, feet tucked under me, coffee in hand, no one's expectations knocking at my door. "This is mine," I said out loud. "This is actually mine." My voice bounced back to me from the bare walls, as if the house were agreeing. I decided I'd tell my family after everything was settled. After I'd moved in, after utilities were in my name, after there was nothing they could do to meddle or help. That week, Mom called to invite me to Sunday dinner. "We're having pot roast," she said, "and your father and I want to talk more about your house search. We found some incredible options." I almost said no. I almost claimed a work emergency or a migraine. But there was a small, stubborn part of me that wanted to walk into that house, sit at that table, and say, "I already did it. I did it without you." "Sure," I said, "I'll be there." I had no idea what I was walking into. Sunday evening, I pulled up to my parents' house in Thornton at exactly 6 o'clock. The smell of pot roast drifted through the open window as I walked up the steps. Inside, the TV murmured from the living room, and I could hear the kids squealing. Aiden was sprawled on the carpet playing with toy cars. Harper chased Chloe around the coffee table, their little socks sliding on the hardwood floor. Alex lounged on the couch, scrolling through his phone. Brianna hovered nearby, cooing at Chloe and laughing a little too loudly at everything Alex said. Mom and Dad moved around the kitchen in their familiar ballet of plates and serving spoons. It should have felt like any other family dinner. It didn't. The air felt organized, like everyone already knew their lines in a play I hadn't been given the script for. "Juliet," Mom called, too brightly. "Perfect timing. We're just about ready to eat." We sat down around the dining table, the same one where I'd spent childhood birthdays blowing out candles on modest cakes while Alex's parties took over the backyard. For a few minutes, everything was normal. Dad complained about the Broncos' latest loss. Alex talked about some project at work that might go viral. Brianna told a story about Harper's teacher saying she was gifted. The kids shrieked with laughter in the next room. I almost let myself believe it would be a regular dinner. Then Mom set down her fork and folded her hands, that fixed smile on her face. "So, Juliet," she began, "we've been doing some research, and we think we found the perfect house for you." There it was. Here we go, I thought. She slid a printed listing across the table like she was presenting the winning lottery ticket. A glossy photo of a massive 5-bedroom house in Arvada stared up at me. 3-car garage, enormous yard, pristine white siding. "It's only 10 minutes from Alex and Brianna's place," she said, excitement creeping into her voice. "Huge backyard for the kids, a finished basement that Alex could turn into a home office. Plenty of space for everyone." "Everyone," I repeated. Brianna leaned forward, eyes shining. "We've been talking about it, and it just makes so much sense. We could come over most weekends, maybe stay during summers. The kids would have so much room to run around." Alex nodded, like the decision had already been made. "Yeah, it'd be great. You wouldn't feel so lonely in that big house by yourself." My fingers tightened around my fork. "Who said I'd be lonely?" Mom waved a hand. "Don't take it personally, honey. We just know how much you care about family. This way, you'd finally have a house full of life and laughter, and you'd be helping your brother's family. That's what families do." There was a buzzing in my ears, like someone had turned the volume down on the whole world. They weren't even pretending this was about me. I took a slow breath, set my fork down, and looked up. "Actually," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me, "I already bought a house." The room went silent. Aiden's toy car skidded across the floor in the next room and hit the baseboard with a soft clack. Chloe's giggle faded. Mom's smile froze, then cracked. "What?" she said. I met her eyes. "I bought a house," I repeated. "It's a 2-bedroom Craftsman in Lakewood. I closed on it last week." For a second, no one moved. The whole table held its breath. And then the storm hit. Mom's chair scraped back so suddenly it made Harper jump. "A two-bedroom?" she said, her voice sharp enough to cut the air. "Juliet, what on earth were you thinking?" I kept my face still. I was thinking about what I wanted. Alex let out a laugh. Not amused, not even surprised, just dismissive. "Where are we supposed to stay when we visit?" "You're not," I said simply. It was like dropping a lit match into a room full of gasoline. Mom pressed a hand to her chest. Dad's jaw tightened. Brianna's eyes widened, already glossing over as if tears were forming on command. "You're not serious," Brianna breathed. "Juliet, the children can't share rooms forever. You can't expect them to stay cramped while you're spreading out alone in some house across town." "It's my house," I said. "I bought it for myself, not for extended family vacations." Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware jump. "Enough." The room went still. "You are being selfish," he said through clenched teeth. "Selfish and ungrateful. We raised you better than this." "Dad!" "No," he snapped. "We have bent over backwards for you children. We worked our whole lives to build a family, and now you think you're too good for us? Too good to help out when there are 3 kids who need space? Your brother is doing his best." I almost laughed. Alex doing his best meant showing up to dinner with a new watch while claiming money was tight. But I didn't laugh. I was too tired. Mom leaned forward, her voice tight and trembling. "Juliet, if you had told us you were buying a house, we could have helped you choose something suitable. Something with room. Something for the family." "I didn't want help," I said. "I knew what I wanted, and I bought it." "But what about us?" Brianna cried. "Do you know how hard it is living in that tiny house with 3 kids? Aiden and Harper are sharing a room, and Chloe's crib is practically in our closet. That's not fair to them." "And that's not my responsibility," I said. Silence. Then, "You've always been like this," Alex said suddenly, leaning back and crossing his arms. "Difficult, standoffish. You act like you're some special case, like the rules shouldn't apply to you." I stared at him. I could have reminded him that I paid rent at 18 while he got a free luxury college experience. I could have pointed out that I bought my car with saved money while he got one at 16. I could have listed every unfairness, every double standard, every time I kept my mouth shut when I wanted to scream. Instead, I just said, "I'm done being treated like a backup option for your family." Brianna burst into tears. "How can you be so heartless? These are your niece and nephew." "My niece and nephew," I said, "are not my excuse to be walked over." That's when Dad stood up. "You will apologize," he said, "and we will forget this conversation ever happened. Tomorrow we will all go look at houses that make sense. You're not going to live your life selfishly while the rest of us struggle." I rose slowly to my feet. My pulse was pounding, but my voice was steady. "I'm not apologizing, and I'm not buying a house for anyone but me." Mom's face twisted. "You can't walk away from your family like this." I grabbed my purse off the back of the chair. My fingers didn't shake, not visibly anyway. "Watch me," I said. I walked out into the cool night air, the smell of pot roast still clinging to my hair, and I told myself I wouldn't cry, not in their driveway, not after everything. I made it to my car before the first tear fell. When I got back to my house, I stood in the empty living room, letting the silence settle into my bones. I'd imagined celebrating my first night as a homeowner with excitement, maybe champagne. Instead, I sat on the floor beneath the reading nook window and felt the sharp ache of a fracture that had been forming for years, finally breaking open. I slept on an air mattress that night, the house still echoing and new. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls. They didn't stop. The first voicemail was Mom, crying. The second was Brianna, sobbing harder. The third was Alex, angry. The fourth was my aunt, who I hadn't spoken to in years, lecturing me about family duty. Text messages flooded in. "Mom, Juliet, this isn't you. You're being manipulated by pride. Think about the kids." Brianna, "Aiden cried when he heard you didn't get a house for them. Do you even care?" Alex, "Unbelievable. You're proving everyone right about you." Dad, "You have until Friday to reconsider." I muted every thread, which only led them to Facebook. Passive-aggressive posts about children who forget who raised them and how family sacrifices don't mean anything anymore. Brianna shared a photo of the kids squeezed together on their bunk beds with the caption, "Some people don't understand what real love looks like." The comments were brutal. People who had never met me called me selfish, spoiled, ungrateful. Someone asked why I hated kids. My stomach twisted with every notification. And the worst part? Late at night, lying in my new house, listening to unfamiliar creaks in the dark, doubt crept in like a draft. Was I being selfish? Should I have bought a bigger place? Was I really the villain here? I'd get up, walk barefoot through the hall, and stand in the living room. Look at the kitchen, where morning light would eventually spill in. Look at the space where my couch would go. This house had cost me years of saving, late nights, skipped dinners out, and every ounce of independence I'd fought for. I wasn't giving it up. Not for guilt, not for obligation, not for them. But the harassment didn't stop. In fact, it escalated. And then, they crossed a line I never imagined they would. For a few days, the silence felt like a bruise. Sore, tender, but manageable. I muted all their numbers, blocked their Facebook posts, and focused on settling into my new home. I hung curtains, unboxed dishes, found a paint color I loved for the kitchen. I spent evenings curled up in the reading nook with a thrift store lamp and a blanket, listening to the quiet. Real quiet. Not the strained silence of family dinners, where every word is weighed and counted. On Saturday morning, I started planting my first garden. It wasn't much, just a few rows of tomato starters, basil, rosemary, and some lavender by the fence. But it felt symbolic, like putting roots in the ground after years of floating through someone else's life. My phone buzzed on the porch railing. I didn't check it. Trevor came over that night with pizza and his easy, grounding smile. "They'll calm down," he said as we ate on makeshift stools in my half-furnished kitchen. "Your parents just need time to adjust." But Trevor didn't grow up with people who thought family meant, you owe us everything. He didn't see the way my parents weaponized guilt with the precision of surgeons. He didn't hear the way they said, "You're independent," like it was both a compliment and a punishment. I didn't argue. I was too tired. The following morning, I pulled on gardening gloves, grabbed a small trowel, and stepped into my backyard. The air was still cool, dew shimmering across the grass. I crouched down, gently working soil around the lavender plants, humming under my breath. For the first time in months, I felt centered, grounded, at peace. And then I heard the slam of a car door, followed by another. Then the high, excited squeals of children. My blood froze. I stood slowly, soil clinging to the knees of my jeans. My heart thumped a dull, sickening beat against my ribs as I turned toward the driveway. There, like something out of a nightmare I didn't remember having, stood Alex's SUV. All three kids tumbled out, running toward my backyard like they had rehearsed it. And behind them, Alex, Brianna, carrying overnight bags. My throat tightened. "No, no, no, no." "Surprise!" Brianna called out, her voice bright and cheerful like a confetti cannon. "We thought we'd come for a visit." I stepped forward, blocking the gate into my backyard. "I didn't invite you." "Come on, Juliet," Alex said, rolling his eyes. "We're family. Family doesn't need an invitation." "When they do," I replied, "is when it's my house." But the kids had already darted past me, barreling into my garden. Aiden kicked over a pot of basil. Harper plucked lavender blossoms like they were confetti. Chloe, little Chloe, sat right down in my tomato patch and began scooping handfuls of soil into her lap, giggling. I felt something inside me stretch and strain, old, familiar exhaustion pressing against new, raw boundaries. "Please get them out of my garden," I said, my voice too calm to be safe. "They're just kids," Alex said with a shrug, unbothered. "Relax." "Yeah, Juliet," Brianna added, already setting bags by my back door. "They're not hurting anything." "They're destroying my plants," I said. "Alex, Brianna, get them out." Brianna's eyes filled instantly with tears as if she had a switch for them. "I can't believe you're being so mean. They just wanted to see their aunt's new place." "Bri," I said, "you walked into my yard with luggage." "So," she sniffed, "we thought we could stay the weekend. Maybe longer. You have so much space." "I have 2 bedrooms," I said. "One is mine, one is my office." "Well," Alex said, shifting his weight, "kids can sleep on air mattresses. They don't mind." "I mind," I snapped. Something cracked in my voice. Brianna flinched like I'd slapped her. "You know what, Juliet?" Alex said, straightening. "You're being unreasonable. This," he gestured around my yard, "was why Mom and Dad wanted you to get a bigger place. You clearly don't understand what family does." I reached down and pulled Chloe gently out of my tomato plants. She shrieked with laughter, then annoyance when I set her on the grass beside her siblings. "Get out," I said. Alex blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Get out of my yard, and take your kids with you." Brianna's tears spilled over fully now. "We drove all the way here." "I didn't ask you to." "Don't expect us to keep trying to include you after this," Alex snapped, hoisting Chloe onto his hip. "That's exactly what I expect," I said. "I expect you to stop using me as your backup plan." Alex's face twisted, but he said nothing else. They gathered the kids, their bags, their hurt feelings, and stomped back to the SUV. They left muddy footprints through my kitchen. Yes, they'd walked inside without asking. And Chloe knocked over a picture frame on my desk on her way out. The glass shattered on the floor. I didn't pick it up right away. I stood there, staring at the broken frame, hands shaking with adrenaline and anger, and something that felt horribly like grief. That night, before I went to bed, I changed the locks. Again. I also looked up home security systems, because something about Brianna's cheery surprise rattled me. It didn't feel spontaneous, and it didn't feel final. Trevor tried to reassure me over the phone. "They'll get tired eventually," he said. "No one has the energy to keep this up forever." But he didn't know my family. They'd never once gotten tired of benefiting from my silence, and the worst was still coming. The harassment stopped for a while. Days went by without calls, without texts, without guilt-laced voicemails. On Thursday evening, I sat on my porch with tea, watching the warm glow of sunset hit the fence. Peaceful. Too peaceful. That was when Mom showed up. She stood at my front door with a peach cobbler in both hands, wearing a smile that didn't touch her eyes. "Hi, honey," she chirped. "Thought I'd come see how you're settling in." I hesitated, but I opened the door. Because she was my mother, and because some part of me still hoped she'd come to apologize. She walked through the house like she was taking inventory, commenting on the rooms, asking what type of lock I installed, asking if I had a spare key hidden somewhere just in case, asking what time I usually left for work. Her questions felt soft, harmless, motherly, but something in her tone, something in her eyes, made my skin crawl. When she left, I stood in the doorway watching her drive away, a strange knot forming low in my stomach. Something was off. Something was wrong. I changed my locks again, ordered 2 more security cameras, just in case. 3 days later, I found out exactly why I'd felt uneasy. And it was worse than I ever imagined. Saturday mornings had always been sacred to me. Quiet, slow, almost indulgent. Grocery run, hardware store, coffee refill. Little rituals that made my life feel normal. But on that particular Saturday, normal didn't exist anymore. I pulled into my driveway just after noon, the sun warm on the windshield, grocery bags piled in the passenger seat. My mind was on the tomatoes I wanted to steak and whether I had enough rosemary for dinner. Then I saw it. Alex's SUV, parked in my driveway like it belonged there. A cold shock tore through me. Sharp, immediate. I hadn't invited anyone. No one should have been in my house. My heartbeat roared in my ears as I pulled into the garage. I barely put the car in park before I jumped out, fumbling my keys. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped them. As I approached the front door, a sound froze me in place. Laughter, children's footsteps, movement inside. No, no, no! I shoved my key into the lock, pushed the door open, and stopped dead. My living room looked like a tornado had passed through. Suitcases open, clothes scattered, bags of toys dumped onto the floor, the sound of children pounding through the hallway. And in the center of it all, Alex and Brianna unpacking like they were settling in for the summer. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded, my voice cracking. Alex glanced up casually, like I had caught him rearranging furniture instead of breaking into my home. "Oh, hey, Juliet," he said. "We decided to move in while you were out." I stared at him. "Move in?" "Just temporarily," Brianna chimed in, folding clothes into my dresser. "You know how cramped our house is, and Mom said you'd understand." Mom. Of course. She'd been in my house days earlier, asking about keys, locks, schedules. She had planned this. She had given them access. I felt a rush of betrayal so fierce it made my knees weak. "You don't live here," I said, voice low. "Well," Alex said, straightening, "it's too much space for one person. You don't need all this. You're single. You're hardly ever here. It makes sense for us to use the extra room." I stared at him. "You broke into my house." Brianna's eyes widened like I'd insulted her. "Your mother gave us the key," she said indignantly. "That doesn't make it legal," I snapped. Alex scowled. "Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. We're family." That word, family, hit me like a blow, as if it excused trespassing, as if it justified invasion. "You have 10 seconds to leave my house," I said, taking out my phone. Brianna gasped. "Juliet, you wouldn't dare." I pressed 911. Alex lunged toward me. "Are you seriously calling the cops on us?" "Watch me." The operator answered. 911, what's your emergency?" "My brother and his wife broke into my home," I said clearly. "They are trespassing and refusing to leave." Alex's face went red. Brianna started crying instantly. "What is wrong with you?" she wailed. "Think of the children." Even as she sobbed, the kids continued tearing through my house. Harper dumped crayons on my couch. Aiden jumped on a stack of boxes marked fragile. Chloe climbed onto the coffee table and knocked over a lamp. I stood my ground, hands trembling, heart thundering, but unmovable. The police arrived within 10 minutes. 2 officers, composed, professional. Thank God. Alex immediately launched into his performance. "This is all a misunderstanding," he said. "We're her family. Families stay together." The officer held up a hand. "Sir, is your name on the lease or deed?" Alex blinked. "Well, no." "Do you live here?" Brianna stepped forward, mascara streaking her cheeks. "We have children. She can't do this to us." The officer turned to me. "Ma'am, do you want them removed from the property?" "Yes," I said immediately. That was it. That was the moment everything shifted. The officers told Alex and Brianna in plain, unmistakable language that they were trespassing. They had no right to be there. They needed to leave, now. Alex turned to me, furious. "I hope you know what you're doing. You're pushing your family away." I met his eyes. "You broke into my home." He had no comeback, not one. They gathered their things, kids crying in confusion, Brianna muttering under her breath, Alex shooting daggers at me the entire time. Chloe knocked over another potted plant on her way out. Of course she did. When they were finally out the door, the officers stayed long enough to take my statement. They were kind, gentler with me than anyone in my own family had been in years. "Change your locks again," one officer said. "And if anyone tries this again, call us immediately." When the door closed behind them, the house felt cavernous, hollow, damaged, not the safe place it was supposed to be. I sank onto the couch, my couch, and felt exhaustion crash over me like a wave. But the nightmare wasn't over. Oh no. Because when entitled people get embarrassed, they don't apologize. They retaliate. The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications. Not from Alex or Brianna, not from Mom or Dad. From coworkers, old classmates, acquaintances I barely remembered. Brianna had posted a long, tearful Facebook rant about how I had kicked innocent children out onto the street, how I called the police on my own family. She didn't mention breaking in, or the spare key stolen from Mom, or the damage done. Just me, the monster. Comments flooded in. How could she? Family is everything. Those poor kids. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone. I wanted to delete every app and run away from the avalanche of judgment. But instead I took screenshots. Every single one. Because if they wanted a war, fine. I wasn't going into this one unarmed. The next 48 hours were a masterclass in family warfare. Mom called my workplace, not my cell phone, not even my manager's line. The front desk, crying, begging them to locate me because she was afraid for my mental state. My boss called me into her office, worried, gentle. I explained, calmly, carefully, that my family was attempting to force their way into my life, and I had set boundaries they didn't like. She nodded slowly. "Take all the time you need, Juliet, and if they call again, we'll handle it." Humiliation burned through me like acid. My private life dragged into work. My professionalism overshadowed by my parents' chaos. It didn't stop there. Alex showed up at my gym, cornering me in the parking lot as I walked to my car after a workout. His face was stone. "What is wrong with you?" he demanded. "Alex, get out of my way. You had the cops remove us. You're sick. You broke into my home. That's not the point." It was always stunning how quickly logic died in my family's presence. He stepped closer. Too close. "You're going to make this right," he said, jabbing a finger toward my chest. "Mom's been crying for days. Brianna is having panic attacks. The kids don't understand why their aunt hates them. Fix it." "I don't hate anyone," I said. "I just won't be your free housing." His jaw clenched. He reached for my arm. I pulled away, hard. "Touch me again," I said quietly, "and I will file for a restraining order." He froze. Shock flickered in his eyes. Then rage. Then something like fear. He stormed off without another word. By the time I got home, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the door. Enough. I'd had enough. I called a lawyer the next morning. A calm, steady-voiced woman named Anna Ramirez, who didn't flinch when I described everything. Not the break-in, not the harassment, not the social media circus. When I finished, she said, "Document everything and don't respond to a single message." So I did exactly that. Screenshots, voicemails, posts, photos of damaged plants, security footage of Alex's SUV leaving my driveway. Every insult, every guilt trip, every accusation, they went into a neat, chronologically labeled digital folder. It felt empowering in a strange, almost clinical way, like I was finally cataloging the truth. Anna drafted cease and desist letters for all four of them: Mom, Dad, Alex, Brianna. When they were delivered, the silence was instantaneous, like someone had flipped a breaker. No calls, no texts, no Facebook tirades. It was the quietest my family had been in years. But quiet doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it means regrouping. A week later, I received a crisp envelope in my mailbox stamped with a law office logo. My stomach clenched as I tore it open. A letter from a lawyer representing Alex and Brianna, threatening to sue me for intentional infliction of emotional distress, alienation of affection. I sat at my table, staring at the paper. Then I did something I hadn't done in months. I laughed hard. When I brought the letter to Anna, she flipped through it and snorted. "This is nonsense," she said. "They have no grounds. At all. If anything, you could sue them for harassment and trespassing." For a moment, I considered it. I imagined showing up in court with my meticulously organized folder, watching my family scramble to defend their entitlement under oath. But the truth was, I was exhausted. Not beaten, just done. Done letting them drain energy I needed for my own life. "I don't want to sue them," I said. "I just want to live in my own house and not be bothered." Anna nodded. "Then I recommend two things. Keep every record. Build your life and let them watch from a distance." So that's what I did. I got up early, made coffee in my cozy kitchen, replanted my garden, hung pictures, assembled bookshelves. Trevor came over and helped me mount curtain rods. We laughed when one fell off because we hadn't screwed it in tightly enough. My house, was finally starting to look like a home. The garden slowly revived. Lavender resilient as always. Tomatoes forgiving my family's chaos better than I could. One evening, golden light washing through my reading nook, I opened my laptop and posted a simple, calm message on my personal social media. "I bought my home for myself. I am not responsible for housing my brother's family. I asked for boundaries. They were violated. I defended myself with the law. That is the entire story." I didn't use names, didn't accuse, didn't dramatize, just the facts. The response shocked me. Friends I hadn't heard from in ages sent messages. "Good for you. I've been through something similar. Proud of you for standing your ground." Even two of my cousins, who had publicly sided with Brianna earlier, sent apologies. The silence from my parents and brother after that? It wasn't the plotting kind. It was the defeated kind. And God, it was freeing. Weeks passed. I didn't hear from them again. Not a knock on my door, not a voicemail, nothing. One morning, I woke up before sunrise and went to the kitchen, made coffee, opened the window, felt the soft breeze move through my house, my name on the deed, my locks on the doors. I curled into the reading nook, tucked my legs beneath me, and looked out at the tomato plants thriving in the early light. If someone had walked in right then and asked if I missed my family, I would have said this: I miss the family I thought I had, but I don't miss the family I actually had. I miss the dream of parents who would celebrate my achievements, a brother who would protect me instead of taking from me, a place at the table where I was wanted, not tolerated. But that family never existed. Not really. What exists now is this: a quiet home, a peaceful morning, a woman who finally stopped apologizing for wanting her own life. I took a slow sip of coffee, breathing in the warmth. My life was mine, my home was mine, my peace was mine, and I wasn't giving any of it back.